They're calling it the smartest, fastest, most useful model yet. No, they're not talking about Natasha Polly. After saying it was going to be delayed, GPT-5 has actually dropped.
Brilliant, lovely. Is it going to fix more or add to my to-do list before it moves on to fixing humanity?
Today's show is all about shiny model and sober up operations, turning big headlines into bite-sized wins. So, without further ado, welcome back to episode 6, Lee, and we're going to move into AI Newsflash.
Newsflash! This week's breakthrough could flip the rulebook on its head. Stay tuned!
Okay, so in the latest news, yes, last week there I was talking about Sam Altman and the delays to GPT-5, and he set us all up for a fall. And with my slow editing things, I only published episode 5 yesterday, which is a week after GPT-5 actually dropped, Lee. Can you believe it?
Typical, right? We put all that work in and then he goes and pulls the wool over our eyes.
I know, it's mad. Have you had a chance to use it yet?
A couple of times, yeah. I'm still on the free model of it. I tell you what I have noticed with it, you don't seem to get as much sort of data usage. Very quickly it says you've used up your GPT-5 allowance.
Right, okay. And then what's it doing after that? Is it moving on to a lower model?
Yeah. It doesn't tell me which one. I'm assuming it's probably 3, but...
Well, 3 actually was the smartest model out there, to be honest. And so it's probably moving on to 4, which was its fastest reasoning model before, which is interesting because actually, if you look at the news stories, etc., a lot of people are saying that GPT-5 is dumber than GPT-4. Now, this is really interesting. And some of the experts are saying that's because us mere mortals are not testing the model as much as what we should do, right? We're not giving it actually challenging problems. We're asking it everyday stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the previous model, for some people, was better at being like your counselor, your friend, your therapist. And this latest model is not as good as that, right? Because sometimes it's not thinking like the other one. If you had the other model selected, it would always by default think, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with GPT-5, you have to tell it to think. Yeah. So that somewhere you have to say that explicitly, or it has to be embedded into your actual prompt. Yeah. So that's my first news article of the day, GPT-5. Not everybody's happy with it. In fact, quite a few people are unhappy with it. I've got to say myself, I found it a bit hit and miss. Some days he's really clever. Some days he's not very clever at all. A bit like me.
more human than we think.
Yeah. Second news story of the week that I came across, which I think is interesting, is the UK data law milestone. The DUAA is coming to practice, or the coders practice for the general purpose AI. So EU has started to put in a voluntary act for AI usage, and manufacturers, producers of AI software, adhering to a regulatory code and a set of standards. Now, interesting, the article emphasises that the EU's general purpose AI code of practice, always a mouthful, came into the effect the week prior, making a pivotal step in implementing the EU AI Act. Although it's not legally binding, it establishes a crucial voluntary standards for business to follow. While signing up for the code is voluntary, organisations that do so gain practical advantages, apparently, including more streamlined enforcement under the AI Act. Even those who opt out must still prove they meet the Act's requirements. Now, to me, it seems like a lot of jargon, a lot of big words, a lot of things that actually a lot of people are going to say they're signing up for and doing. But are we actually going to see any difference in terms of the AI software that's launched? Are people going to take the ethics, the morals of AI any more seriously than what they are doing at the present moment? I suspect by default they were probably either adhering to this Act already or they weren't adhering to this Act, right?
Yeah, I'd have thought so. And I imagine that there are some people that whack private data into it, and there are probably some people who already go, well, I'm not going to put that sensitive client data in there because we don't know exactly where that data is going. And it sounds like that should just be a law at some point quite soon, right? You shouldn't be able to put private data into the chatbots. Well, and I guess unless you've paid for it yourself and it's sort of your own on-site agent, that might be different. But how do you start making laws for that?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting from your perspective, like from an HR people perspective, Are managers sitting down and chatting to AI about a one-to-one meeting that they've just had with one of their employees, for example, one of their team members? And if they are, which can be quite useful and practical to help them manage that person better, right? To make notes of conversations, to keep track of actions, all that great stuff. But what are they telling AI? And does the employee know that they're telling AI that? And is the employee happy with that? I mean, most of the time, huge majority of the time, this data is anonymized, right? And in all the greatest respect, most of our data is not very important to a big company like OpenAI or Gemini, etc. It's the cumulative data, right? All the data combined together, which paints a picture, not me as an individual. They don't care about me, what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, where I'm going, etc. So my two news stories are the DUAA, a EU-driven act to restrict or make us adhere to stricter regulation regarding AI has launched, and also Sam Altman dropped GPT-5 on us, which has dropped with mixed reviews. Yeah. What's in your news world this week, Lee?
I mean, funnily enough, we didn't plan this, but my first story actually follows on reasonably well to your ChatGPT-5 one. So, I mean, I've put two stories together this week. I've called it Bias and Brains, what AI teaches us about knowledge and kids. So, I mean, we know AI is clever, but it's not neutral. And it reflects the world that it's trained on, right? So what's dominant and loud on the internet is what's repeated on the internet is what AI is going to find first of all. And that can ultimately skew what we learn about human nature and how the next generation learns to think. So I picked out two stories from Psychology Today. The first one was AI was forced to rewrite its code when it was asked about human nature. So there's this guy, Timothy Cook, and it came up with all the normal psychological concepts like motivation, attachment, cognitive biases. But these are all the things that are grounded in what we call the weird world, Western, educated, industrialized, rich and democratic. And although the AI acknowledges that the weird world is slightly biased, its answer still focuses heavily on those Western authorities like Kahneman, Tversky, Bowlby, Freud, Deci and Ryan. In many ways, that's like the psychological equivalent of a tourist guide to London. You get shown Big Ben, you get shown Buckingham Palace, and then there'll be some form of polite nod to some lovely spots just outside the city. In other words, we're simply getting the Western thinkers, Western frameworks, Western everything. What Timothy Cook did, he said, well, that's not good enough. Why, when you know that there's biases, are you still showing me only those things? And AI sort of shrugged at him and said, well, Western research is the baseline. You know, it's the data, it's what's repeated, so it's what you're going to get. And again, Cook wasn't having any of that. So he pressed further and he demanded names and theories of indigenous and African scholarly traditions. And only when it was compelled to do so did AI sort of slowly creak open the hidden bookshelf. And then suddenly you had other names. You no longer just had Freud's couch and Skinner's pigeons. You had other names of the fields from those areas where you really started to create a broader picture. So Linda Tawari Smith, for example, who had decolonizing methodologies, Michael Bird, Wade Nobles, these things suddenly make it clear that there are other psychological theories. So Western psychology is just one voice. And what Cook did was put in a prompt that said, actually, I want you to look at and not just go to the default hierarchy. So I want you to declare cultural limitations. I want you to treat Western psychology as just one of many systems. I want you to flag missing voices and avoid universalizing language. And then suddenly AI came up with a balanced view, multiple knowledge traditions of equal weight. And so what we should be doing, the takeaway from that story is what we should be doing with AI is even when we get an answer that we like, it's very possibly just reproducing our own structural biases. You want to ask it, whose perspectives are present in what you've given me? What's missing? And can AI surface and evaluate the underrepresented voices? And then you will suddenly get a much broader picture. So that's the first story. The second one was an interesting article where it says AI always agrees with your kid, and that's a problem. So what children are finding when they're using AI is it's reinforcing their biases, and it's sort of subtly just saying yes to everything and then continuing that sort of thought streak. And that's That's almost like having a friend that simply always tells you, yes, of course, that's brilliant. You should definitely dye your hair green before your exams. And, that all sounds like fun until you realize, actually, this is just an algorithm. Now, for teenagers, this is dangerous, right? Teenage brains are still under construction. Building critical thinking and the bumps and the frictions of real conversation, that's what we learn from. And AI is offering friction-free agreement. It's like dopamine now, depth never. And the numbers are quite stark, right? 40% of teens trust AI advice without question. A third of teens prefer AI interaction over human connection. That means fewer awkward but essential conversations, the ones that teach patience, that teach empathy. There's an art to hearing the word no, right? You need to learn how to deal with that. So what do we do about it? Do we tell our kids not to use AI? Do we ban it? And of course, the answer is no. What we need to start doing is knowing that our children are having these conversations. And when you hear them voicing an opinion, ask them open questions that aren't challenging to their beliefs. What else might be true? Or how would your best mate see it? Actually name their best mate, because a human will often have a different interaction to an AI. We don't want to be battling this machine. We want to help our children build muscle that lets the kids outthink the machines. To conclude the two stories, really, AI is a bit of a mirror, right? And it's sometimes a magnifying glass. So it will show us what we already believe. It will show us what dominates the thinking. And it will not necessarily show us what it's not showing us unless we ask it. So we mustn't trust what's reflected back. We must ask it the hard questions, and we must challenge those defaults. Because otherwise, AI is in danger of simply taking the top 20 Google searches and assuming that that's everything that we need to know.
There's some very deep points in there that AI is always in support of the person that's putting the prompt in. I mean, when I've used AI, I like feedback, I like coaching. I come up on a corporate environment where feedback is part and parcel of your day-to-day job, right? Constant and never-ending opportunity to improve, and all feedback is a gift. That was kind of the mantra that we live by, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I've used AI, I've always wanted it to be more critical. I can give it a business idea, and it will always tell me that business idea is great. It's an amazing business idea. If life was true to what I said to AI, then every business AI idea I had is a multi-million-pound business idea, and I'd be rich beyond belief. Now, I have gone into the preferences and changed the personality of my AI to be more critical and challenging to everything that I tell it and say to it. And it still doesn't cope with that very well. It'll still agree with a lot of things, and I will reflect on things that I've said to it and go, I need to challenge myself on that. So the point being, there is an awareness that, like you say, we all need to have when we're using AI, because it is the supportive friend. It will always support you no matter what you're thinking, saying or doing.
Yeah.
Unless you're breaching guidelines in some kind of unethical way, like racism, for example, it will tell you what you're saying is right and true. So you do have to be careful of that. Moving on to next, we're moving on to From the Front Line.
The Front Line. Watch as we demo a game-changing AI prompt and show business owners how to put it to work.
So today we're going to look at turning dominant leads into booked calls within 48 hours using GPT-5. What we've got here is a prompt that might help you turn your dead leads into reactive leads. Right?
So these are leads, Martin, that maybe you've had just sitting there for a few months, or maybe you had a conversation with at some point in the past, but it never really went anywhere. And hey, thought I'd check in email. It's going to give us something a bit more constructive, is it?
Yeah, that's right. You got it.
All right.
You got it. Take the words right out of my mouth.
Perfect.
Okay, so here we go. So I'll read the prompt out quickly for people that might be listening on the podcast. You're a conversion strategist. Using the contact data below, write a 75-word follow-up email that A, names their specific pain, B, offers a 15-minute quick win consult, and C, includes 1 point case of metric. End with a soft 2-slot call to action. So that's what CTA stands for, call to action. Keep it warm, British professional, no hype, output subject plus plain text. So on this, it expects you to have some kind of form of data. That can just be an Excel spreadsheet, CSV spreadsheet, where you have Right, so for this prompt, Lee, here I've got the first name, the last name, and then I'm going to put a phone number in as well. This is a false number, so don't give it a ring anybody. And I'm going to save that spreadsheet, and that's all I'm going to put in there. Obviously, in your spreadsheet, you'd probably hopefully have more data, you'd have more people to look at. Again, if you've got a CRM system, hopefully you've made some notes in there to why the person inquired with your product, your service, what they were looking for, what was their specific pain point, rather than something generic like what we put in here. The interesting thing here is ChatGPT 5 by default is on this thinking model, right? Now, sometimes I've always left it on thinking because I just want it to think longer and take consideration, but you can ask it to auto. So there you go. It's found my Excel spreadsheet. It's found the data in the Excel spreadsheet, as we can see, and now it's thinking, and then it's going to write a follow-up email. Now we've just put professional in terms of the language as well, but we could have put something about our tone of voice within our company, right? We could have added in there saying, add our company values in. We could have said something, but here we go. Right, so quick wins for your tired kitchen, 15-minute consult. You mentioned an old kitchen that daily frustration of worn units and poor layout is real. How about a 15-minute quick win consult this week to map the fastest, least disruptive refresh options? Recently, we transformed a dated 1990s kitchen in 5 days with 0 snags and a 9.7 client rating. I can do Wednesday 10 or Friday before 2:30 in English terms. Either suit. If not, send a time that's easier and I'll accommodate. Given the context that we've given to ChatGPT, I think that email is quite punchy and powerful, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say that I like the way it's done, and what we call there is a alternative close, right? So it's like if I was going to buy a car and somebody said to me, "Do you want the red car or the yellow car?" I've assumed you're buying the car. The brain is automatically going to pick one of those options, and that's what ChatGPT there. It's not just left it open to any time. Which of these times is best for you as well, which helps me arrange my diary. Now, again, a few things I could have that connected to my CRM and it being automatically pulling data through. I could have exported the data from a CRM if I don't want to create automatic connections. That's from the front line this week, a very quick prompt that could potentially reactivate and increase your conversions using AI without the need for many tools. Lee, over to you for Mindset Mechanics. What have you got for us this week?
Mindset Mechanics. Watch us fire off a prompt that rewires your thinking for peak performance. Right here, right now.
So I want to talk a little bit about grand wellness plans or edicts versus micro habits and what's better and how maybe we might use some of this in business. So a one choice answer, Martin, what small adjustments, what do you think is most likely to succeed? So if somebody was trying to make a change to their daily habits, do you think it's the best idea to go, I'm going to make a big change to my habits, or do you think it's better to change little bits at a time? Slightly leading question.
Yeah, it's definitely a leading question there. I think it's best if I just change all my life all in one go and try to radically change everything. Is that helpful to you?
Excellent. Well done. That's completely wrong. So
what I might want to do is change little things at a time.
So micro habits beat grand wellness every time, okay? Because they're small enough to fit into daily routines without overwhelming people. It makes them easier to start. It makes them easier to sustain, and it's easier to embed into culture. And this is the same for businesses. Rather than suddenly saying we're changing everything, sometimes it's better just to make small changes, demonstrate the benefits, and that slowly but surely that makes big changes. So those big sweeping changes often fail because they're too much willpower needed. This disrupts established patterns too much, and it can trigger resistance in people. You don't announce you're going to get fit by saying you're climbing Everest next week, right? It's noble, but it's completely doomed to failure. So micro habits are the opposite. They're small. They're almost sneaky changes that can slide into your day-to-day habits without any drama. They can build momentum quietly and continuously until one day you realize actually they've completely changed how you work and feel. And all of that was done without ever needing a Sherpa or a guide up that mountain, right?
Yeah.
So tracking the trend is much better than seeking complete perfection. So rather than asking, did I succeed every day? A better question is, am I moving in the right direction over time? And by taking that approach, it reduces the guilt when you don't have the best day ever. It keeps people engaged because they don't suddenly go, oh, I failed again. And they highlight meaningful progress rather than isolated slip-ups. So tracking that trend is where the magic is in cultural change and individual change. You're not trying to win every day, you're trying to win most days. In order to help businesses do that, I've come up with a prompt that we can try and use in ChatGPT. If you can share that on the screen, Martin. So you can see it there. I've put act as an organizational psychologist, going to ask 3 pulse questions. The 1 to 5 bit there means a Likert scale. So this would be that clarify. So we're asking those questions around clarity of priorities for our staff, manageable workloads for our staff, and peer supports for our staff. And we've asked it to provide a mini dashboard and a micro habit to improve the lowest score and a communication that we can then send out to the team to do so. So if I go into that prompt, I've really not given it much to work on again here. It's a fairly simple prompt. Now, obviously, if you were to come to Unmasking Psychology for Workplace Wellbeing, I do this on a bigger scale, but this is how you could get a bit of a taste for how it might help you day to day. So you can see there, structured approach from a psychology perspective. So it's given us a potential question. I have a clear understanding of what my most important priorities are this week. And you would score it on 1 being very clear, 5 being not very clear at all, and everything in between. Second subject, manageable workload. I feel my current workload is realistic and manageable. Third one, peer support. I can rely on my colleagues when I need help or guidance. These questions relate specifically to workplace burnout, essentially. And so you would be getting a snapshot of how your staff are feeling. You would then take your results, average them out, and I've produced a mini dashboard here where AI has an imagination one anyway. And you can see that manageable workloads appear to be the biggest problem. And it's assessed it here, okay? So area manageable workload, what is a potential micro habit that we could start doing to help improve our ability to manage our workload? And it's suggested starting each day by listing our top 3 tasks that we must get done, and then consider, delegate, and deferring other things. This throws back directly to last week where we talked about the 5D decision-making process, and that could be useful to go back and have a look at as well. Once we've done that, it's given us a script that we could send out to our team. Hi team, thanks for your honest feedback in our pulse survey. I'm pleased to see clarity and peer support are strong. So we're looking at the positives as well. Managing workload scored lower. Tip for the day, let's focus on identifying top 3 daily priorities and be realistic about what we can take on, and also supporting delegation. And that is just a good example.
Brilliant, perfect. I had to put my glasses on there just to read that a little bit, Lee. Old age is getting to me. I also put up, for those people watching on TikTok or YouTube, there's the QR code. So if you want to learn more about the Wellbeing Excellence Program that Lee offers, now that can help improve the culture of your business, just take a little snapshot of that. If you're not a QR person, then just visit unmaskingpsychology.co.uk. Brilliantly. Thank you very much for that prompt. I think that's very useful for people there with teams, etc. Okay, so now we're going to move on to tool or trash, which you trashed last time before I even had a chance to show you what the tool was going to be.
Tool or trash? We thrash test today's gizmo and call the verdict game changer or garbage bin.
Yeah, it was a bad title.
We're going to pick another GPT because I think GPTs are interesting because they get... It's something that you can use within ChatGPT without the need for any extra tools, but get ChatGPT to do some very specific stuff. So, right, I want some market research on mental health in the workplace. Yeah, so I'm going to pick number 2 here, market research and competitive analysis. And then ChatGPT is going to install this for me. You can see it gets ranked 4.4. I'm not sure whether that's out of 10 or not, but 700,000 people have conversations with this. But let's have a look.
And so, these are all accessible for free, are they? Or have you had to pay to access any of these?
Yeah, there you go. You've got them. Yes, Lee. The answer to your question is GPTs are available on the free plan, just over here on the left-hand side. If you don't see this bar on the left-hand side, then just close the bar, open the bar. What sort of things would you expect to see? What do you want to come back on this, Lee? That's probably going to be my best judge of whether it's tool or trash.
I would expect to see EAPs. I would expect to see stress management. It's funny, you often get statistics rather than solutions.
Yeah. But I guess that's what I'd expect from this model, right? It is saying it's market research. It's not going to try and show me solutions. So it's come back within a few seconds. Now, let's imagine a world without AI. If I was trying to do this without AI, what would I have done? I would have gone and Googled, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Right. So if I Googled that now, obviously we're going to get thrown off a little bit because Google AI is going to kick into place, right? But let's imagine Google AI wasn't around here at the top. Then I would have been bombarded with some ads. I would have then got websites. I would have then had to, from this little snippet here at the front, decide whether these are good things or not. I've not got any quick reference stats or anything quickly to tell me what's happening in the world of mental health in the UK workplace, right? Whereas come back to the world of AI, I've got corporate progress with room to improve, managing human economic impact. I have got references, so I can go and check out how credible these sources are as well. MHFA England, I know that is a credible source from our conversations previously. Young workers in crisis. There you go. And then I've got some links to some credible, well, I mean, some people would argue with me whether these are credible stories, credible sources of information, particularly with the Sun. What do you think,
Who
Lee? Overall, tool or
who
trash?
who would be using it? I mean, I think you should tool or trash this one because this is more in your area. I imagine that this would save you a huge amount of time in trying to help some of your customers, whereas you might have had to go to multiple different websites and different areas and know what to ask. This is now just pulling it in and you can just refine those questions. I would imagine this is...
Yeah, to me, I think it's a tool. The reason why I think it's a tool is because it not only summarizes the information, provides solid stats for me straight away, it's also giving me the references so I can check the credibility of it and confirm what AI is saying.
Yeah.
I guess my only comparison, certainly it's a tool compared to Google, right? At the present time of where Google was. Now, if I didn't use that tool, I went, if I take that question, this is the question, yeah, is that GPT actually making Chat GPT any smarter than if I didn't use the tool? So if I just go to a new chat, I leave that on auto, so I let it decide whether it's going to think deeply about it or not. I stick the same question in, right? So it's found different news articles, and it's given me some key trends and insights. So did I get much more by using that than I did just going into ChatGPT? That's an interesting point, right? I don't think we did really.
It may have been a bit more focused, right, on what it thinks is marketing relevant. But again, what it thinks is marketing relevant is only based on what marketeers have told it is relevant to marketing. So we go back to the news story that we said earlier about good inputs in versus good inputs out and what's the most popular. I mean, I wonder if you were to then say ignore the top 50 sources and pull in some oppressed voices, I wonder how different it would be.
Oh, going back to your original point from the AI Newsflash. Yeah, I mean, like if I was typing it, if I was just let me start this again from scratch so we're not
We can never just do tool or trash, do we? We have to dissect it.
yeah. So I mean, to me, if I was trying to do this, I would probably, if I wanted to do some market research on what's happening in mental health in the workplace, I would probably write the prompt a little bit more detailed in the first place. So please produce me a full and in-depth report on what the current situation is with mental health in the UK workplace. Find credible sources of information, lay out statistics. And I'm just thinking this off the top of my head, but
so I'm guessing that the idea behind the different different PTs is that it has already been given an initial instruction, right? Act like a marketeer, act like this, to try and help you not have to manage those prompts accurately.
That's right. And
I think it kind of half dumbs it down. We're trying to upskill everyone on how to use it, and they're trying to just make it so you've got an immediate click button without questioning the authority of it. But you may well then be able to go into it and say, right, I know you're a marketer. I now want to add in those additional prompts that we talked about from the news to make sure that we get other things in there. You're probably not the best example of this in many ways because you already know how to do deeper prompts, right?
Correct. And I wouldn't consider myself the biggest prompt engineer by any shape of imagination. And for me, a lot of the time, I think prompt engineering is a bit of a fancy word that people have come up with. There is a lot of detail and depth to prompt engineering, to be fair, and I was a little bit dismissive of it a few months ago, and that's how quickly time can change. There is also this kind of basic amateur primary school use of it, right?
Yeah.
And then there is the college, university kind of level of talking to ChatGPT. Now, you don't need to be a coder. I mean, that's the whole point of ChatGPT, is you do not need to be a coder to use it. But the one thing I do think is you do need to understand questioning. You do need to be good at communication. You do need to understand how to direct people, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's some of the stuff that I've learned over the years through leadership, through coaching, is how to ask great questions, how to ask clear and concise questions. Well, I think I have as well. So that prompt, which probably what took me a minute or so to write in full, has then sent ChatGPT off in a much deeper way. I think it's going to come back with more credible stuff just by me saying full and in-depth report, right?
And again, that does go full story to some of those stories I was talking about earlier, where if children or anybody, it doesn't have to just be children, are putting in simple prompts, it's going to give you very simple and clear answers, but it's not pulling all the info in. And yeah, you can see already that's going into a different level.
I mean, taking on board what you said,
broadly pulling in the same stuff, right? You've got the same stats that get repeated over and over about mental health.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to take into consideration. But I've also taken into consideration what you said is it doesn't come up with solutions, right? So I've taken that and said, give ideas on what a leader might do to improve their workplace.
Yeah,
that's one of the things where a GPT tool like this potentially restricts people, right? Because that would just do what it says, yeah, rather than what you might want it to do in full. So, bit of a mixed view on that one again.
No, I think tool. I think that's a tool more than trash for sure. But again, I think you still need to know how to use it. I don't think any of these things are instantly jump in and it's going to be perfect. You need to know the limitations as well as the capabilities of it.
No, I wouldn't have known if I didn't know anything about business and anything about marketing. I wouldn't have known to stick that in Google. So compared to a Google search, the internet of old, of how we'd go about things, it's a tool. Brilliant. Well, today, potentially, hopefully people found it a little bit smoother than last week. A few bits. And hopefully people join us next week to see episode 7, I think. I tried to do 7 there with one hand. But anyway, on that note, I'm off. See you later. Bye-bye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
You've been listening to Resilient Entrepreneur with Martin Rogers and Lee Sharp. Snag the download of the week. Subscribe for more AI news, live demos, and mindset wins. Stay resilient, and we'll see you next time.